This is TWiT.
Congratulations to Apple. Best Picture Oscar for Coda. Nobody was paying attention at the time, but that's just to let you know they did win. First ever Academy Award for Apple.
And for any streamer.
And for any streamer. Big deal,
best
right?
Picture, yeah.
Now,
Yep.
I saw a number of people saying, Tim Cook, you show you're brilliant and all that. But honestly, all this really is something that premiered at Sundance. By the way, this is also the first time a Sundance premiere won an Oscar. And Apple saw it, and Apple engaged in a bidding war and won and bought it. I think not for a whole lot of money. I can't remember.
$25 million, I think.
Yeah.
Which is not a lot, but for the size of the film, but it was significantly higher than what some of the other bids had been, because I think they'd already pre-sold some of the, I guess, distribution rights in some other territories. Anyway, sorry, go on.
The other thing that actually it redounds more to Apple's glory is that they then spent $10 million for an Oscar campaign.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how you get the big names to come to your streamer, is saying, not only did we win an Academy Award, but we won it because we had a $10 million marketing campaign, which was more than the movie's entire production budget, to get this into the Oscars, into consideration, and ultimately to win. And I don't know how important those campaigns are, but I think Hollywood takes it seriously. And if you're a Martin Scorsese, you're looking at that, you're saying, maybe I won't go to Netflix where my movie will be buried with 300 other films. Maybe I will go to Apple and get that Oscar campaign. In fact, he does have a film coming to Apple pretty soon. So
Matthew Bilioni at Puck News wrote a really great thing about this. Actually, it was before it won Best Picture, but it had been expected to win because it won the other awards, the other big things, and just based on how the voting block is, it was
a tight race. I think there were.
It was tight. I think it was between it and June for sure.
Gosh, I thought Power of the Dog, which I didn't like all that much, but sure seemed like it had a lot of sentiment behind it, including 12 nominations.
Yes, and then it was other than director. I mean, it was shut out of a lot of stuff. But Baloney goes into this on Puck News, but he wrote a thing last week called "Tim Cook's Oscar Moment Didn't Come Cheap," and it goes into a lot of like what they had to go through in terms of having a good Oscar campaign, and that it is more difficult than just showing up with $10 million, because clearly Netflix and Amazon have tried that before and it hasn't worked. So it was a lot of, massaging and messaging and stuff to get what they were able to get.
I wonder about how much of it too is like there's a certain degree of sort of just subject matter and general sort of the world that we live in, right? I mean, it's a very depressing time for a lot of people, and it's been hard, and like something that has a more uplifting thing. I think that was one of the things with the Power of the Dog. A lot of people were like,
it's kind of grim.
It's like,
yeah,
exactly. And it's like maybe we need, and you can't. There's only so much you can do with money to buy that, right? Like having that at your disposal in terms of something that feels like, hey, it's a feel good movie, right? I think has a lot going for it in that way.
There's no question though that streaming, in fact, as we were talking about, kind of the end of the line for E3. After this Oscars, I think it might be the end of the line for traditional theatrical movies, and that streaming really is dominant. Netflix had 27 nominations. That's including the 12 for Power of the Dog and 4 for Don't Look Up. Apple had nominations also for Joel Coen's Macbeth, 3 of them. So there were a lot of streaming nominations. And I've seen actually a number of articles, and there have been a number of directors, including Ridley Scott and Scorsese himself, who say, the idea of a small film or an art film or even just a thoughtful film doing well in the theaters is pretty much gone. It's going to be comic book movies, extravaganzas. It's going to be Dunes going forward, and that with the streamers. And this is what you were talking about earlier, Dan, with the idea of writing a series as a novelist, having more than one book to develop a story and characters. I think it's kind of the same for streamers. It's not just movies, but 6 episodes of something like The Dropout can be so much more compelling than a 2-hour movie.
Yeah, I mean, it gets people bought in. They come back, right? It's kind of the equivalent of like recurring revenue in some ways because people don't. I mean, look at Disney Plus. Disney Plus is a great example of this. They've carefully set up their schedule so that like there's never a time that you don't want to be watching Disney Plus or subscribe to Disney Plus. And I think a lot of the other streamers are following the same tack where it's like, let's have this sort of constant rollout of things so that we can keep bringing people back. And that helps, right? Netflix, I think in some ways has struggled more with the film aspect, right? Because they've dropped a ton of films, but to your point earlier about Scorsese and like finding the signal to noise ratio there, where it's like, well, there's a movie coming out or 10 movies coming out on this one day, and it's like, do I really want to invest my time in that, or do I want to do something where I can sort of watch over a long term and get comfortable with it? Because I don't know, for myself, much easier for me to like reach for a remote and start watching a new episode of something that I'm already invested in than to commit a new 2 hours to like a movie.
I didn't even think about that.
Psychology thing there.
Yeah, thinking about my own use. Absolutely. Yeah.
One thing of the calculus that you should also factor in with Apple specifically is that it's not just money, but it's influence. And they have spent a lot of time bringing in some Hollywood insiders into the fold to make sure you don't just have their expertise, but you have their network. And that network effect is also extremely powerful.
It's currently run by two insiders from Sony. And I think that when they brought the Sony guys in, that's really when Apple TV started to take off.
100%. And the Puck News thing that I posted, and I posted it both in the IRC and in the Discord, goes into some of those details. But I think you're exactly right. Like their first attempt at content was not good, and then they found the Sony execs who were had like a good TV sensibility, and now film acquisition stuff. And this to Wesley's point, like they have influence, and so people don't have the same kind of, in Hollywood especially, they don't have the same maybe reservations and feelings of negativity towards Apple that they might towards Netflix and Amazon, which helps when it comes time to trying to lure people in to make exclusive projects for you.
Yeah. I didn't see Tim Cook at the Oscars. Matthew said he was going to be there, and I was looking for him.
I believe he was. Yeah.
Oh,
I'm pretty sure he was there.
He was in the cheap seats.
Yeah. Well, because at this point, they had to have like the social distancing spaces and whatnot, so it was kind of like the Golden Globes in terms of setup. So yeah, the execs and whatnot were definitely
they were in the back. It's funny.
Seat filler.
He got no airtime if he was there. It's funny. All the movie stars. That just shows you, as much as Silicon Valley wants to be Hollywood, and as much as they make, and they really are probably more of an economic driving force than Hollywood, and more of an influence culturally, they still have the nosebleeds. They're still in the back of the auditorium when it comes to glamour events.
It's an interesting point about the Netflix thing too. Somebody mentioned this. It might have been Julia Alexander on Twitter talking about this, like that Netflix and the studios have almost a very adversarial relationship, right? Because Netflix's whole point was like, we're kind of trying to supplant the existing model, whereas all the people, to your point, Christina, about Apple like having a little more goodwill, like people in Hollywood use Apple products. They like Apple products. That gives a sort of a positive spin on it, and that's not Apple's only business, right? They're not there just to put Hollywood out of business. They're there to sell phones. That's just a sideline for them. So
and they're buying things from existing studios, right? Like it's not like they're trying to do everything in house, which is what Netflix shifted to doing. So they're still buying other things too. But exactly, it doesn't have that same adversarial relationship. You're exactly right.
Interesting. Really interesting. Yeah, I actually ended up paying for Puck News, partly because our friend Baratunde's there, but also it's a really good journal for covering kind of the confluence of Silicon Valley politics and Hollywood. So,
I love it. I'm a big fan of that, and also the Ankler. It's interesting because the trades have. Almost all of the Hollywood trades are now owned by Penske Media Group. All of them are really Deadline, Hollywood Reporter, Variety. And now we're seeing the next generation kind of disrupt things the same way Deadline did, 20 years ago with the Ankler and Puck News. So.
And by the way, if you say Penske, that's a familiar name. Yes, it's Roger Penske's son, who took the billions he made in auto racing and automotive and invested it in Hollywood media. He owns Variety. He owns Hollywood Reporter. He owns Deadline. He owns it all.
Mm-hmm.
Along comes
Rolling Stone.
Rolling Stone. That's right. What a fascinating.
South by Southwest.
South by. He saved South by when they were about to go out of business because of COVID. He stepped in, and he's a majority owner now of the Penskes. Isn't that funny?